Hey guys, we're here with Joey at Combat Arts Training Academy, and we're here to talk about color. Now when it comes to color, there's three main things we want to go over. White balance shift, and picture profiles. So when you're thinking color, the first thing you want to think about is light. It's very important how you interpret light, how you see it, and it's also very important how your camera interprets light. Now our cameras interpret light through white balance. When you first start shooting with DSLRs, it's often tempting to use auto white balance or even to use the presets. That can be very easy. Canon makes these nice pretty icons with a cloud or a house, and you just match that out. If it's cloudy outside, we use the cloud. If there's a sun outside, we use the sun. And it's very good, but it's taking a lot of the control away from you as a camera operator. There's a lot more you can do. So we always suggest shooting in Kelvin. Now Kelvin is a unit of measurement for telling the hue of a specific light source. Or in other words, it's how we measure the color. And it's going to make our whites look white and our colors look natural. We use Kelvin for two main reasons. The first is so that we can decide how we want the image to look. When we use the presets, they look proper. But what if we don't want it to look proper? What if we want it to feel a lot colder or a lot warmer? Kelvin gives you that control. By riding our Kelvin higher, it's going to feel really warm. By riding your Kelvin lower than the light source, it's going to feel very blue. So we're going to start here by getting Joey working on the bag, and we are going to start with a Kelvin setting that makes it look proper. And then we're going to ramp our Kelvin higher than it's supposed to be to say 58, 6000, and we'll make it feel really warm. And then we're going to bring our Kelvin all the way down a lot lower than it's supposed to be to say 35, 3000 Kelvin and make it feel very cool. And we'll see just how much variation and how much we can say as a filmmaker through just this one single dimension of Kelvin. The second reason we use Kelvin is because it helps you to see light so much better. You'll walk into a room and you'll automatically just sense that the light is, say, 3200 Kelvin when you're inside, or 5200 Kelvin when you're outside. And you'll start to see all these variations in light color, which is going to make you a better cinematographer. White balance generally adjusts in the blue to amber direction. But what happens if you want to take other tints out? If there's a really cool function inside these cameras that not a lot of people know about, and it's called white balance shift. And it lets you pull blue, amber, magenta, or green into your image. And all we do is we just go into the menu, we go over to white balance shift, and then it has this grid. And as we're dialing it in, we see a legend in the top right. That's great for telling our other shooters what our white balance shift is so we can match it up. There's a couple big reasons that we could use white balance shift. First is to fix problems. So say we're shooting outside and we have a lot of grass, and we're getting reflected light off the grass, and it's very green. We could pull green out by pulling towards magenta, and we're going to get a much cleaner looking image. But like Kelvin, it's not just about making it look proper, it's also about adding a mood and a feel. So we can use white balance shift to actually add an emotion to our image, such as adding blue and green to make it feel very worn and rugged, or adding amber to actually make it feel more intense and hot. As Joey's skipping, we're going to go up and we're going to try all four different shifts so you can see just how much the white balance shift can change your image. So the next thing we're going to talk about is picture profiles. And picture profiles are something that can dramatically change how your image looks. Most people find one that they like, or they find one on the internet and they just leave it that way all the time. And what we want to do is encourage you to change your picture profile based on what you're trying to say and who it is you're shooting. Now there's four basic dimensions in picture profiles: sharpness, contrast, saturation, and color tone. We're going to go through each dimension and talk about how a high, low, or neutral setting can actually impact how the viewer feels and how your image looks. So the first one is sharpness. Now we're going to go into our picture profile and we're going to turn our sharpness all the way up. Now a super sharp image can feel very raw and gritty, versus going low on sharpness, and this time I'll bring it all the way down, so we are at -3, and that's much more of a soft, dreamy type feel. So the next dimension is contrast. Now a really high contrast in the camera can make the image feel very harsh and very punchy. Now if we go to a very low contrast, that can make the image feel very weak and worn. So for a situation like this, a high contrast with high sharpness would be very fitting. So the next dimension is saturation. Now a high saturation can make it feel like it's full of life and very punchy, whereas a low saturation can make it feel very worn and old. We'll start here by bringing our saturation all the way up. So we'll go with a +4. And we see right away, all of the colors pop, and it's got a crazy amount of life to the image. Whereas on the other hand, we're going to bring our saturation down -4. And you'll notice this doesn't make it black and white. It's just a very desaturated look. The last dimension is color tone. Now, color tone is one of those things that a lot of people don't really use or realize what it does. Color tone allows you to do a red or yellow shift, and it's used for correcting skin tones. So if we go into the menu here and we dial in a -4, that's going to make our skin tones very red. And now if we go back into the menu and we dial the other way to a +4 on color tone, we're going to get our skin tones very yellow. And you can see when you're shooting different people, you might want to use the color tone to adjust for the skin tone, or you could use the red-yellow adjustment to add a look and feel like we used the white balance shift. So a couple tips and tricks for picture profiles. First, when it comes to sharpness, you want to keep in mind that if you're doing a wide shot, high sharpness is going to increase the amount of detail at a very minuscule level. Now with the compression, H.264 on these cameras, that's going to give the codec a little bit of problems, and you'll notice that your image might start to fall apart and you'll lose detail in really fine objects. So as a general rule, when we're shooting really wide shots, we're going to try and bring our sharpness down. If you find yourself shooting in a situation where a lot of latitude is needed, so say you're shooting outside at a wedding and the bride has a very white dress and the sun is out, you're going to notice that there's a huge difference in the white of her dress and say the black in the shade and in trees outside. So if you're shooting in a situation like that, we'd recommend bringing your contrast down, and that's going to retain information and let you do more in post. So the last thing I want to mention is the CineStyle picture profile. A lot of people ask if we use that. And if you don't know what it is basically a really flat profile that's made for retaining as much information as possible so that you have more options in post. The downside to that is you're committing yourself to having to do that post work. And the other problem that we have is that we're trying to use our picture profiles to interpret our subject and what we're trying to say. And so when we feel it on the back of the screen, that helps us form our shots and our sequences and our storytelling. So we try and get it as close to possible straight out of the camera, and then we do the final tweaking in post. So the last thing we're going to do is combine all of these things together to show you how much power you have in the camera to make an image that says something. So we're going to combine our white balance shift, and our picture profile to create two completely different looks. So the first one is going to be a very high contrast, high saturation, high sharpness, very cold look. And so we're going to bring our Kelvin white balance a lot lower than it should be. On the opposite end, let's try a very worn out look. So we'll bring our contrast down, our sharpness down, our saturation down, and then we're going to bring our white balance up a lot higher. And we're going to compare that to the really punchy blue look.